Hello, hello. How are you today? My name is Nicholassay, and I am just starting to figure out this equipment. So, I want to talk about cleaning your butt. Why? Well, I don't think we talk about our buttholes enough. And I'm not obsessed with butts or anything. I really like women's butts, beautiful, but not the hole so much as the beautiful rest of it. Anyway, I was thinking about stuff that I could talk about. And I realized that I spent the first maybe 30 years of my life, I'm from the States originally, US, and I realized that I spent the first 30 years of my life wiping frickin' skin, really sensitive skin with dry, cheap paper. What's with that? It really only makes sense once you get outside of your own culture. Like, you start to see how weird things are that you do on a daily basis. And it's totally normal, right? You're growing up, if you're from the States or somewhere they use toilet paper, it's totally normal. Like, what do you do with that? Oh, yeah, you wipe it on your butt, and then it's clean or whatever. And, this is not a good system. And so I'll get into my history a little bit later on or whatever, but I ended up in South America, and they use southern cone in Argentina and Uruguay. And so down there, they kind of take the cues from the Spanish, the Italian, French, whatever, Latin. Get it? And I'm gonna drink some coffee while I do this. It's kind of informal. First couple weeks are gonna be kind of informal. If you hadn't gathered that already, based on the topic, um, down there they have a normal toilet, but they use that bidet. Now I knew a guy in the states who had a lot of money. I mean, not by modern standards, these billionaires running around, but he had a trust fund. He was doing pretty well. Not worried about the financial end of life. And he was remodeling his house, and he had a bidet put in. And I was kind of like, what? At first, I didn't know what it was. This is back before I started really traveling. And he explained it to me. It's like a hot, or what? It's not necessarily hot water, but the uh, the jet. In case you don't know, maybe you don't know what a bidet is. There was a time in my life that I didn't know. It's kind of like an extra toilet, but you use it after the toilet, and it shoots hot water, or sometimes it's cold water. Some of them have like a hot water, cold water tap thing, and it's like a little butthole fountain, and you use that to clean off. Sometimes people use soap, and that's pretty good. It's definitely a step up. Although one of my it's funny. When I was living in Uruguay, I was down there for about 10 years. I had a friend there who was remodeling his bathroom. Again, pretty well to do, although he didn't have a trust fund. It would have been more fun if he hadn't. He didn't have to worry about money so much. But um, this guy, he hated all the space that the bidet took up in his bathroom. He was not from South America, and he when they remodeled their bathroom, him and his girlfriend, they took it out. Ended up giving it to me, though I never used it. The bidet. It's still probably just sitting out there in the middle of nowhere, rotting. Although it doesn't really rot. I guess some of the fixtures might rust. So that was the Spanish method, and my friend had a point. You know, bidet takes up a lot of room in your bathroom. Although in retrospect, it's a far, or knowing what I know now, it's a far better way to clean your butt. To me, I mean, there's no one right or wrong way, but think about toilet paper, right? You got to grow trees or something. You need some kind of fiber you can turn into that. Turn into the toilet paper, and then you literally wipe it with your shit, and then you just throw it away. Think about all the works involved. The water. Now, granted, water's a valuable resource as well, but you just use it directly. It doesn't take years and years and years and countless thousands of liters or more. I don't know how much it takes to how many liters of water it takes to get toilet paper to make a roll of toilet paper, but I imagine it's a few. And so, you're using the water directly, right? And there's no transportation costs involved. I mean, you have to move the water to your bathroom. So I pretty much thought that the Spanish and the Italians, wherever the bidet came from, and maybe if you know a lot about bidets, and you throw in the origin of the bidet in the comment section below, if that's something that you're wise in. So then I ended up leaving South America because of the violence and the expense, and it got worse. It was not the place that I moved to. It was a relatively short period of time. And so now I'm in Vietnam, and now I'll tell you what, these guys have cleaning your butthole down to an art form. Now, like many things in Vietnam, I don't know if it's something the Vietnamese came up with, or if it's something that it was like originally from the French, because I don't really like France that much. No offense to the French. I've been to France a few times. It's okay. I don't like Paris for sure, but I love the Louvre. So what are you gonna do? But so I don't know. I don't want to claim that the bathroom sprayer next to the toilet is a Vietnamese innovation, or it's something like the banh mi, like their sandwich, their national sandwich, that they kind of adapted from another culture. I don't know. But they have a little, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like if you have a really nice kitchen, you got the little sprayer next to the sink. Well, they do that, but in the bathroom, and it's for your butthole and your junk. And that's really nice because it's the best of both worlds. You're not using toilet paper, which I hate, and not just for the ecological reasons. It's terrible. You just like dry paper on your raw skin. I mean, God. Anyway, I can see how people get hemorrhoids. I mean, the diet probably doesn't help either, but in the States, I mean. And so you get this little jet. You finish your business. Not to get overly involved in what happens in the bathroom. I'm not into that. But so you finish your business, and then you get the sprayer, and depending on on the water pressure that got connected to this thing, you can either just go full bore and get a nice clean butt, or sometimes you got to be careful because I've been in places where the water pressure was crazy high, and I'm like, what? I mean, I guess the other thing is too, you can use it to clean up the toilet. You can use it when you're cleaning the bathroom out. You can use it kind of like a power washer and just kind of soap everything up on the floor, the toilet, the whatever, and you just spray everything down. But really, okay, first of all, it's cheap, right? Because it's just a little hose. So instead of having to invest in a big complicated bidet, is basically a big porcelain bathroom fixture. You just install a hose, right? Right next to your toilet. It. I don't know if you ever used a bidet, but I'll tell you, it's a bit of there's a learning curve involved because it's stationary. It's like a little fountain for your butthole next to your toilet. So you kind of have to turn it on, and like work your butt into the right position, and it takes a lot of time, and it's not without risk, because you're basically doing some bathroom acrobatics, and I could imagine people getting hurt using bidets. Especially when you've been using your whole life, you get old, and you're like, oh, now it's time to do the bidet thing, and there's the fucking bathroom floor is a little slick, and next thing you know, help, I've fallen, I can't get up, and my butthole still isn't clean. Yeah, so definitely risk involved. Not so with the Vietnamese method. You just no movement is required. You just pick it up, clean it out, and then if you want to, I suppose if you want to use some toilet paper to kind of dry off, because it's not exactly I don't know how to put it. Water goes everywhere. It's a jet of water. So I mean there is that aspect, but it's so hot and humid here anyway. I've never really noticed the difference. So I mean that to me, that was sort of an awakening. But I think we need to look for more things like that in our life because number one, you're gonna have a much cleaner body. I mean, you gotta have a clean butt. If you got a dirty butt, that's nasty. Number one, and number two, it's uncomfortable. So you want to have a clean butt, and toilet paper is just not the way to do it. So, but once you get away from toilet paper, now how are we going to do it, right? So, the bidet is an option, but as I said, it's not a perfect option. The butthole jet, the Vietnamese butthole jet, that is a great way to go. and it's cheap and there's really no downside. And so, what can we do in other aspects of our life? Other ways of being, other things that can be innovated very simply, very easily. I mean, everybody loves Tesla, but they're fucking expensive, and that's not ideal. So it's an innovation. It's a necessary innovation. We need to get off fossil fuels, but we need to look for more ways to innovate using things like the Vietnamese butthole jet. So I'm doing these 10, 15-minute things for now. I'm going to string them together, put them out as a weekly thing. Name's Nicholas Say. There's going to be more stuff coming. It may or may not involve cleaning your butthole, but it may involve other things as well. I probably will expand the topics as time goes on. Hope you're all having a great day, and I'll be at you. What's happening? It's number 2, or whatever, part 2 of the first set of monologues that I'm doing. Nicholas Say, here on the internet, and I was not quite sure what to talk about, but I think I'm going to talk about metaphysics, which is a little different than yesterday, but at the same time, I think it's very interesting and perhaps a little bit more intellectually involved than cleaning out your butthole, although I think they're both important. I think they're both very, very important to your life in general. I think that we ignore both of them. I think in the West especially, we ignore metaphysics, we ignore spirituality, and I'm pretty sure it's not good. I was raised a Christian. I was raised a Christian Lutheran. Not by choice, like most religions. You sort of inherit it. It's like a cultural inheritance, and but still, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all good either. It really didn't fit in with the people I was subjected to indoctrination with, catechism as it's called. But there's worse things in the world than that. So I'm not really going to talk about Christianity. I'm not really fault finding. I'm more pivoting towards Eastern religions. I'm a huge fan and student of, I guess you could say, Alan Watts, who I think developed a very, very healthy metaphysical worldview, which was sort of necessarily vague. I'm more shifting towards foundational beliefs, a contrast between the Vedic concept of the Atman or Atman Brahman and the Buddhist concept of Anatta, or non-soul, or there is no separateness. And to me, these two concepts, I'll post some links to other videos that dive into the concept of the Atman and perhaps into Anatta. There's a Buddhist monk born in England but practicing in West Australia, Ajahn Brahm, who does wonderful talks, and he does a great piece on Anatta, and I'll definitely get a link to that. The underlying concept is that the Vedas say that there's one, you could maybe say, root soul or progenitor of man, or the entire universe, really, and that concept is the Atman, or Atman Brahman. There are different sects, and you would probably want, if you really want to get into the bits and pieces of this, the nitty gritty, you'd probably want to go to a scholar because it's pretty complex stuff. But the underlying concept is that behind everything, behind you, behind me, behind the window, behind the tree, behind whatever, or there is something that gives rise, and that's the Atman. It's pretty simple concept, really. And apparently, excuse me, a little coffee. Apparently, the Buddhist or Buddha did not like this concept. And some of the foundational concepts, specifically Anatta in Buddhism, argue against the concept of the Atman. there is, in fact, according to them, nothing, no thing, right? Now, to me, these are remarkably similar concepts, because if you have the Atman, who is this one infinite progenitor of everything, where's the real difference between that and Anatta, of no thing? I mean, either way, there's this is just one infinite expanse of whatever you want to call it. I mean, you can't really call it anything, right? Because it's infinite, infinite, right? But apparently, this has been a big deal over whatever the 2,000-year history of Buddhism, and then, well, prior to that, there was no discord because there was no Buddhism. So, or whatever, 1,500 to what was it, 2,500 years about since the Buddha is said to have died. I don't know. It's something you could research on Wiki, I'm sure. But the interesting part here, and the big contrast that, and I don't know if you really could consider Buddhism a religion. I think in some ways, in the way it's practiced, at least what I've seen in Asia, is that I would consider it a religion in the same way you would consider Catholicism or Judaism. They have temples, they have religious officials, they rely on donations, they have what is essentially a fairly a fixed cosmology that is comprehensive in its scope. You could make the argument that at its core Buddhism does not, because it all breaks down into this concept of anatta, of nothingness. But in practice, most people never really use that I've seen, or even make an effort to comprehend the underlying concepts in the cosmology. Not that there's any kind of judgment involved with that. People should use these metaphysical systems for whatever they can get out of them. Whatever helps. I was very, very against organized religion for most of my adult life. After I got past the the obligatory indoctrination, done mostly for my mother, man, she pushed that hard, and yeah, I mean, it was just so weak, and the mysteries, the Christian mysteries, the underlying concepts involved, excuse me, were just so flat and without meaning that I kept researching Western mystery systems, Hermetic philosophy, alchemy, etc., and so forth. But it wasn't until I really got into Carl Jung, and I read about him, because he wrote a lot of really esoteric stuff. I mean, very esoteric writer. If you're not familiar with his work, it's worth reading something like Man and His Symbols. Very, very worthwhile use of your time, in my opinion. But he, as much as I like his esoteric work, I was also fascinated by what he wrote from the perspective of practical psychoanalysis, and that a phrase that he used constantly when he wrote about religion was, I think it's Christian in origin, the cure of souls. And there's this fundamental unhappiness that seems to be in the world. This seems to be a part of the human psyche, and people project it, right? People project it because it's not really able to be dealt with by using the conscious, the abstracting function of the mind. And that doesn't resolve anything, because you never really grow. A person never. I wouldn't grow. You wouldn't grow. No one really grows when these things are projected. But anyway, so what he would say, or what I understood from his writing, is that from a standpoint of a doctor, the doctor doesn't need to know really why something cures a patient or why it allows them to become functional in a social sense again. What matters is that it works. So Jung talked about, and I don't know which, he wrote so much, I could not reference it if I wanted to without some research. He would, if somebody had been traditionally, I'm just to use a Catholic, because there were a lot of them in Europe at the time, they still are. He would say, well, your family was a Catholic, do you practice? And they will, no, it doesn't work for me, or whatever, it's been years since I've been to a church. He'd say, well, why don't you go try it? You're obviously having feelings of severe unhappiness. Just check it out, go and go to the church, see if it works. And sometimes it worked. And so they say, wow, thank you, I had an incredible experience, and, their lives would improve. And it doesn't really matter why a trip to the church did that for them. what matters is that, they felt better overall. And so I kind of gained from that. I gained a new respect for uh, the the use of metaphysics in a practical sense, to give people solace, for them to help them find meaning in their lives. But to this day, I still don't see much use in the classical Western traditions, and I think it comes down to the concept of humankind being separated from the divine, from the creative energy, from the Atman in the Vedic sense, and things get more difficult to explain. I think in Buddhism, because they just insist on this nothingness, and so if you insist on nothingness at the center of creation, or nothingness as the foundation of a cosmology, you really can't define it, which is maybe the point. But once you go past the metaphysical root, past the foundational cosmology of nothingness in Buddhism, they are able to create these very worthwhile concepts. Reading a book right now. I can't remember the guy's name. He's a Vietnamese Buddhist scholar. He's famous, I guess. He's dead now. Um, I'll look for a wiki on him. Throw in the description. But he does this beautiful metaphor of a flower, and how you can't separate any part of the environment from the flower without destroying the flower. This is more or less the concept of Gestalt psychology, right? You can't change, or the concept of Gestalt philosophy. It doesn't matter what area you apply it to. Either the Buddhists maybe would argue that you can't apply it. How can you limit the concept of Gestalt, right? No, he does this great metaphor of a flower, and he says, if you change, or something along, I'm paraphrasing now, if you change the concept of, or you change any, not the concept, but in reality, if you change the position of a planet, or you change the clouds, or you change the soil, or you change the air, the flower would not be the same. In fact, if you make significant changes to the environment, the flower may not exist at all. And I think that's something that's lost on us. I think that's something that we need to consider more in our life, not only for the good of the environment, but for the growth of humankind. And this might be something I touch on tomorrow, or sometime this week. Is we've created abstractions that we believe to be completely accurate in terms of their relation to reality. The periodic table is a perfect example, right? Newtonian physics was for a while, but that's sort of been, I don't know if it's still really believed to be a holistic philosophy in terms of a physical, or a mathematical representation of reality. But we really think that our understanding of chemistry, basically, is an absolutely accurate view of the way things are. And so we can take our abstractions, as real. And I think that's very dangerous, because we're missing out on an entire area, and we don't know how big it is, because it falls outside of our ability to abstract, right? And it, to me, leads to a sort of soullessness. And I don't mean it as a criticism. I think we criticize too much. I think I would more say it's an imbalance, and that we've taken our abstractions far too seriously for far too long. And I'm not sure how it grows, but I believe that the first step is to recognize that we don't necessarily have a fundamental understanding of reality, and that it may not be possible to do by using abstraction. And that may or may not be, if you're a Buddhist monk and you're listening to this, that may or may not be the one of the underlying teachings of Buddhism. I may be paraphrasing without knowing it, and if I am, well, then great. And maybe if that strikes it, if that strikes you as being a finger pointing to the truth, you might want to look into that. That is more than 10 minutes, so I will be back tomorrow, and I hope everybody got something out of this. I really enjoy it, and I'm going to put a link to my Patreon if you want to give me money. This will all be distributed for free for everyone. And if you're sitting on millions and millions of dollars and you're getting a lot out of it, send me a couple bucks. If you're broke and you can barely afford the internet to listen to my stuff and you enjoy it, well, I hope you make some more money so that you have a more secure financial position. Have a great day. Hello, what's happening? So, again, welcome. If you forgot my name between the last time I said it, which would have been maybe a minute ago on the track, but more than a day's gone by, so that's fun. The passage and the slippage of time. Doing the monologue at night today, end of the day. A lot of stuff going on, so but that was good. I had a lot of time to think, and well, the concept of moving, the concept of movement, the concept of change is definitely on my mind. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with change, but I think it's going to lead somewhere else. So we all have a very unique view of what's normal, of what we can expect on a daily basis. Some people don't know what they can expect, or some people have very firm routines. I've lived all over the world, traveled as well, not living but traveling, two very different things. And excuse me, I kind of enjoy a certain amount of newness, newness in my life on a daily basis, experiencing new cultures, experiencing, I don't know what you call it, just a little bit of uncertainty maybe in my daily life. Not danger. There's no death wish or wish for harm or wish for any kind of damage in my life. It's interesting that you don't quite know what's going to happen. I'm sure that there's people who crave consistency. And that's okay too. Excuse me. Beer tonight. Far too late for coffee. And so I guess we're headed back to Buddhism because I think a lot about the concept of reincarnation. My girlfriend is Vietnamese. She's a Buddhist. And for those of you who don't know, the Buddhists are, well, I guess you could call it a religion that thinks that we reincarnate from life to life, the same awareness, because it's not a soul, remember, there's no soul, Anatta, but the same awareness or whatever has many lives. And it can incarnate in animals or humans or whatever, And yeah, so that's all fine and good. You can take it at its face value. Maybe there's truth in it, maybe there isn't. But the funny part is that she, like many people, I would say that it's almost normal here, is absolutely terrified of ghosts. Now, this makes no sense to me. Now, also, they worship their ancestors, or they venerate them, or they take care of them. Or it's like a big deal. They have these like, I don't know, that there's some special day once a month or something on the lunar calendar or something where they put out a huge offering, all sorts of candy and cigarettes, and I mean, it depends on how much money you've got, right? So the more money you have, the more you put out. But I'm like, aren't they supposed to be reincarnated or something? Like, so obviously there's something there that I don't understand, or there's some nuance of the cosmology that is lost on me. But even more strange to me is that she's terrified of ghosts, and I'm like, aren't we all ghosts? Like, aren't we? I mean, if we all reincarnate and whatever, aren't we all ghosts? Like, So what's to be scared of? I mean, you got a person or this entity or this force in a human form, or it's just floating around fucking with people. What's the what's the big difference? Of course, to me, there's a tremendous amount of violence in the world. Vietnam is pretty chill compared to most places, but there's violence everywhere. And where there's a lot of violence, but not in an intentional sense, is in traffic accidents. Because they all ride motorbikes, and so I would be far more terrified of being on a motorbike in Vietnam than some sort of angry ghost or something. But I mean, who wants to deal with an angry ghost, right? I mean, nobody wants to deal with that. But no, from a practical perspective, I think that a motorbike accident is far more likely, or a traffic accident is far more likely to do damage to your life than some sort of phantasm. And that leads me to the idea that we deal with problems that don't affect our lives. And for the most part, we don't deal with problems that do affect our lives, or we don't deal with dangers that we feel we are helpless to stop. Now, there's probably some fancy psychological word to deal with this. I promise I've never studied this, and I'm not down blending it. I do think about it, though. I'll use a loaded example that may get me love and may get me hate, what will probably get me both if any number of people from the United States listen to this. And I think George Carlin did a bit on this. I'm sure other comedians have too. I'm not a comedian. This is just an observation. The big stuff's never on the table in an election, in any election in the United States. Doesn't matter at what level we're talking about. U.S. foreign policy, the drone program in Yemen, the presidential hit list. Guess what? You can't vote on that, and it doesn't matter who you vote for. No matter what, the U.S. military is going to keep lobbing fucking missiles into very innocent-looking people in Yemen. Now, that's not to say there's not a few bad apples at that wedding, but, when you start launching Hellfire missiles into a wedding and then waiting for the funeral and doing the same, that's a pretty ugly thing, right? And so, you're not going to vote that out of office. That's standard practice. And the scary thing is, it's been standard practice for quite some time now. It hasn't always been in Yemen, right? They did horrible things across the Middle East. They did horrible things in Southeast, the U.S. government/military, or, Eisenhower coined it the military-industrial complex. These guys are bad news. You do not want to be around anywhere they're active in, right? You got this thing going in Syria. It's just a mess, right? Unless you're making money on it, or you're using it to your own geopolitical ends. And then there's always this, well, what would Putin and China and this and that? And I mean, it's not to say that Putin and China, or Russia and China, although, Putin's pretty high up there. He's definitely calling a lot of the shots. That's not to say they're a bunch of angels. Certainly not. But that's like, the drunk guy who's like, he's being told to leave the bar because he's had 4/5 of whiskey in the last hour. Not that that's even humanly possible, but you know what I mean. Telling the bartender, I've seen you drinking. I saw you take a drink. Why do you get to stay? I mean, the laundry list of human rights abuses that have come out of the U.S. military and U.S. federal government over the last 50 years are absolutely unbelievable. When you see even a partial list, I mean, just take the major death counts, and you end up with something that looks horrendous, right? That's not something you can vote for. They're going to keep doing that, and that is just how it is. So, when they have elections in the United States, and I'm pretty sure, I just happen to know U.S. politics probably a little bit better than the politics in, say, Ghana or something, because also the rest of the world, I was really surprised by that. In South America, everywhere I've traveled, or even, lived for any amount of time, they take U.S. politics pretty seriously,
which is funny to me because if you ask people in the U.S. what's going on in some other country, dude, they don't even know. They probably couldn't even find the country on the map, let alone tell you who's leading the country. But that's a generalization, of course. But it's fucking true in my experience. So, um, they're gonna talk to you about gay rights. They're gonna talk to you about immigrants. They're gonna talk to you about, a lot of it now is just like silly, like it's Three Stooges esque shots at each other verbally, not like poking them in the eyes and hit them on the head with the hammer or whatever. That's what they're doing on stage. If you watch from the most recent election, that Trump and Hillary stuff, or even Trump when he was doing the Republican primary, it's fucking hilarious. I mean, you can't write stuff that good. Comedy writers, you could put 10 of the best comedy writers in a room and they wouldn't come up with half of the stuff that happened in those debates. And it's quote unquote real. I mean, that to me is really it's funny, but it's funny in a terrifying way. And it's even more messed up in a way, but even more entertaining. Like there's this it's a sick kind of humor that people really take it seriously. I mean, they view those debates as matters of consequence. It's a fucking dog and pony show, and many people outside of the U.S. can see this, but a lot of people in the U.S. can't. And furthermore, like I'm saying, the whole election thing, it's not even it's not deciding anything. All the major stuff is, and I hate to use concepts like the deep state because it's so tinfoil hat, but you could use terms like the military industrial complex. I mean, that was coined by a sitting president in the 50s. Tell me that's a conspiracy. Come on, give me a break. So the big stuff people don't deal with, and I think that's true at a personal level, and I think it's true at a national level, and I think it's true to like what humankind is doing in the environment. I think it's true at a global level, because almost everywhere I've ever been, people are obsessed with things and money, man. You should have seen these guys hanging outside today with their. I mean, they must have some money, man, because if you got the big brand new Mercedes sedan and Escalades in Vietnam, you got some serious coin. I'm staying in a nice place. So it's not expensive by Western standards, but it's not cheap by local standards. And man, people love it. People love that stuff, and and that's just. But what needs to be done to make all that work? It's nuts. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the people who have it. But that's my ramble for the day. That's my monologue, and it's Nicholas Say coming at you. Lots of love, lots of beauty. I hope in my spirit, and I hope everybody else is doing the same. I will be back tomorrow. Maybe it'll be coffee, maybe it'll be beer, maybe it'll just be oolong tea. Take care of yourself. Not at all sure if I'll use that last take. I forgot to set up my condenser mic. The tragedy of home recording. No tech. Keep track of my business. But no, things are good now. Nicholas Say, here in Da Nang. Just flowing today. It's Friday. I'm kind of phoning in everything today. I know if my clients ever listen to this, believe me, I always give you my best. But no, today it's just a little more relaxed. It's raining outside. I like that. So I think today, for my 10 minutes of glory on the internet, it's going to be very free. Going to be very um, uncalculated. I love, and I'm not trying to get attention from these guys because they're popular, but I absolutely love Your Mom's House podcast, and Tom Segura and Christina P. Hilarious. I don't like to watch it all the way through for whatever reason. It just doesn't really appeal to me for an hour and a half. But some of these excerpts that they post, like I was watching this thing about Steven Seagal, ended up sparking a conversation with one of my friends about it, about that guy. And it's very, and I guess this leads towards, I guess today, it's judgment. Today, the concept is judgment. It ends up leading to a very odd discussion because Steven Seagal, he was a Hollywood guy, you know, Under Siege. There's a couple other films but that was Under Siege, I think, was really his high point. And since then, you know, he's been cranking out some stuff that's pretty terrible. I remember when I lived, and I don't know the name of it. I'll look for it. I'll find it. When I had moved to Uruguay, I think the year I moved there, or immediately prior, he had he had produced this movie about terrorists or guerrillas in Uruguay, and it was just the most absurd thing. Because, I mean, okay, sure, in Latin America in the 60s and 70s, they were huge terrorists. We would call them terrorists now. They were guerrilla, politically inspired Marxists, stuff like that, all across the Southern Cone and all over South America. But the stuff that was in this movie, I mean, it's insulting to the viewer in a way, because portraying a country in a way that is completely inaccurate. I mean, it'd be like saying that all of Manhattan is populated by Eskimos or something, and you should show a movie and it's like freezing north of fucking Canada, and they're all in their Eskimo garb, and you're like, and this is Central Park, you know, this is Midtown Manhattan, you know, and it's just it's an absurdity, but that's the kind of stuff that he makes, you know, in the that's what he's been making over the last 20 years, and so Tom Segura and his lovely wife Christina P were ribbing this guy Steven Seagal pretty hard, and my friend brought up that friend Jay brought up that, you know, he actually is, Steven Seagal is an Aikido master, and that deserves some respect, and that also, you know, these movies do have a market. That total crap thing that to me, there's my judgment coming out. This total crap thing, what was it? Something like the Asian Connection, I think. It made, according to IMDb, it made like $2 million. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So you could take it, on the one hand, you could get cynical, right? You could say, "Oh man, look at the state of humanity. If Steven Seagal can crank out this poopy poop work, and make $2 million. Well, he doesn't make that, I'm sure. I mean, you know, he probably makes 100,000 or something. I don't know what he makes on it." Or you could say, "Wow, if that's what people will buy, well, shit, I could make money doing this." That's sort of the more constructive, more positive way to view it, I feel, and I think that's what people need to approach with creativity more often. I write professionally now, and I'm moving to this podcasting thing, talking into a microphone. And I notice that people have a lack of vision, especially people who buy commercial creativity have a lack of vision. And oftentimes they have a very hard time seeing how a creative work can evolve or can grow from another idea. And, you know, it goes back, I was involved in commercial photography and lighting when I was in the States. And hang out in the studio a lot of time spent in a big dark room with lights, doing car photography, and as an assistant mostly. And these guys, you know, everybody's a cynic. Everybody's a takedown artist. You'd pitch an idea like, "Oh, it's something creative, this and that." "Oh, it's been done." And, you know, South Park engaged this concept. Again, going back to judgment, it's sort of the meaninglessness of judgment. The Simpsons did it thing. You know, The Simpsons has been on the air for whatever, 2 or 3 decades at this point. I don't even know anymore. A long time. And they've done everything. They've done everything twice. I mean, that's facetious, but it's sort of true. And, you know, South Park engaged that concept. And I would say the same thing. You know, everything, quote unquote, has been done, But at the same time, it's like pouring, what is it, old wine into new bottles? Is that the saying? This is a everything has to become relevant, right? Even an old idea has to be made relevant in order for it to enter the popular mind of an era. So the fact that something was done 20 years ago is meaningless. From a creative standpoint, you should never take that kind of advice. Even if it was done 3 days ago, you didn't do it. Now, maybe you're a terrible artist. Maybe you have no business in a creative field because you're supposed to be doing something else because you're better at it. And then maybe you shouldn't do it, right? But let the market, let your clients, let yourself tell you that before you just shut yourself down, before you even try. That's that's the fucking train to losers bill right there. It really is. If you just if you know it's one thing to let other people criticize your ideas, and as a creative you have to let that happen, because sometimes once in a while there'll be someone who really does give you good criticism that you can grow from. Most of it's crap. I mean, most of the stuff, most people are unhappy, most people can't create, and most of the time when they criticize your work, you should just let that blow across the deep waters of your unconscious mind. Just, you know, nothing there. And that really, you're not going to learn from most people. Don't think for a second that what most people have to say about what you do or what anyone does has value at all. A lot of people, the vast majority of people, really are just not smart, not informed, not educated, and their opinion is worthless. And that sounds terrible, but again, I'm speaking from experience, so that's my view. You can criticize me in the comments section if you want. I probably won't read it. Does that sound arrogant? I hope it does, because I'm a little arrogant. Anyway, the underlying point is, though, you don't ever want to shut yourself off to the criticism, especially from a source that you trust, because you can always improve. You should never get into a position, I should never get into a position, no one should ever take on a position where they think that everything they do is right and it can't be improved upon, because it always can be, right? And so it comes back to the idea of the value of judgment, the value of judgment, not value judgment, not a value judgment, but the value of judgment is largely internal. Ultimately, every person has to decide the value of a criticism or the value of an accolade, because there's the same thing with, flip it around, forget about criticism, talk about awards. Many industries make up these awards. I use the porn awards as an example for things that maybe shouldn't get awards. And no offense to porn stars, no offense to the porn industry, but like best double anal scene isn't maybe the kind of thing you give a trophy for. I don't know if they do that or not. I've never really followed the adult video, what is it, AVN? Adult Video News Awards, AVN Awards. There's probably others. Look, you can make up a trophy for anything. I mean, that's what they do at trophy stores. They'll put anything you want on that plaque. Organize an event, start handing them out. Next thing you know, a guy with a 10-inch dick has whatever, a couple awards, a bunch of hotties sitting around with him. I mean, and that's, hey, and not to take anything away from that, but what does that award really mean? The guy can plow a chick on camera. I mean, and he does it better than anyone else that year, according to a bunch of people in the industry. I suppose you could make the same argument about the Oscars, but I think there's more skill involved in quote unquote real acting. Anyway. But if you are in the porn industry, don't take that criticism too harshly. You do something that's very necessary in our world. People need that outlet. And I think it's very positive that porn is coming to its own as a media, as a form of media in the internet age. But I don't think about a lot of awards in that. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe you should. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, that's my 10 minutes today, and I think I'm just gonna cut that thing where I forgot to use the real mic, my condenser mic, which I love. Next thing up is a pair of headphones. Nicholas say, talking about random stuff, and I'm enjoying it. I use this as a personal reward, just kind of jump on the mic and talk about whatever. I like to get some guests on too. They'll be, by the time this thing hits YouTube, they'll be in, if they leave it up, I don't know what the regulations on this are. Anyway, there'll be an email address specifically for this channel, podcast, whatever. And you want to jump on and get weird on Skype with me, you let me know. I'll see where it goes. You want to give me money to talk about your product? Probably not yet, because I'll get like 3 views, but later on, I'm totally open. If it's not a scam, I'll plug it. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Love you all. Beauty and love, and, awards for everybody. 10 out of 10. Everybody gets a 10 out of 10 today. Nicholas Say has some more work to do. That was me referring to myself in the third person. Hello, hello, hello. What's happening, y'all? It's Nicholas Say. And I realize as I play this back, I say my name a few times in close proximity. This will be the last edition of this. For a series of monologues. It's a Saturday. It's a beautiful day here in Da Nang. It was raining a little bit again. I like that. And I'm going very free form. I didn't even make sure things were quiet today. I think it's a little bit of flavor, although I'm not sure how much will come through on the track. Sort of like I don't know, like a dirty martini, cheaper vodka or gin, olive juice from a jar of olives. It maybe isn't the best jar of olives. Maybe it's a mid-range jar. They're from somewhere you can't pronounce. Maybe even there's characters on there that you can't understand. It's from somewhere that doesn't use the same stuff we use in English, the same alphabet. But still, you're going to pour it into your stomach and it'll be all right. It'll taste pretty good, especially if it's not your first. I mean, if you're 3 or 4 martinis in, there's no need to upgrade to better hooch as you go deeper in. You can downgrade a little. It's okay. Always drink the best stuff first. And I think the same goes if you're a little older, say over 60 and you got a sweet tooth, have dessert first before dinner. There's no reason why you shouldn't. Anyway, all that being said, I'm kind of just practicing this Zen thing or Buddhist thing. I mean, he's not Zen, this Ajahn Brahm guy. He kind of just sits down and riffs. By now, there's probably a link in one of the previous, whatever you want to call it, previous monologues. There's probably a link to something that he's done. I'll for sure link to his piece on Anatta, because that's an interesting concept. But he just sits down and riffs, man. That's great. I find it appealing. I'm pretty sure the content of the subject matter is not for everybody, but I really enjoy it. So I'm kind of doing that today. I've been thinking a lot about how standards have fallen in media production. When I started working in media, I was obsessed with photography. Absolutely obsessed. I was fascinated by the equipment. I love to see the technique that goes into it. The productions were like Candyland for me, man. When I started doing bigger jobs with real equipment and name photographers, wow, that was crazy for me. Looking back on it, it was interesting, but it's just location work or studio work. It's really nothing that wild. But I really, really got into it, and the standards were very high. The standards that we had to adhere to were very high. There was no, I shouldn't say there was no popular form of, like pulp media or like YouTube videos now. Most of the stuff you see on YouTube, the production quality, and what I'm doing included, is not great. And I think today it's content that sells, or at the same time, the cost of production has fallen to a level that I can't imagine. Even, I suppose for audio it's been lower for longer, but for video or even for digital photography, I talked to my friend about this a lot. I think he's going to come on at some point and we'll riff on it for an hour or two. He's a brilliant photographer. Jason Bonello in Hong Kong, brilliant guy. Excuse me, doing a little bit of the Bia Saigon, or Saigon White as it's called. No, and he's still holding himself to these standards, and he's getting a lot of work doing it. But I think that overall the market for that sort of thing has shrunk enormously, and a lot of that, there's two parts to it. First of all, the internet and digital media have revolutionized the way people see the world. That's number one. And number two, the cost of producing quality images, both still and moving, has just been eviscerated. The Before I left the states, I was starting to do video work for the internet, but still sort of more from a conventional standpoint. And I paid for this HDV Sony cam. I think I paid about 4 or 5 thousand US dollars. And now, for $1,000 US, $1,000 US, you can get something that blows that camera away in every category, and that's amazing. And it's only been a decade, right? And in that same decade, smartphones have come along, and so now, instead of having to reach through to somebody via a television or a computer screen, although we're using the word computer here loosely, because a smartphone is a computer, but it's not like a desktop or a laptop. It's very portable. It's very personal. The way people interact with smartphones is very different. And I'm not saying anything new here, right? But in a lot of ways, it's like an appendage. So now, instead of coming at you through a form of major media, something that costs a tremendous amount of money to gain, and also connections to gain access to, like movies or television. Some joker, yours truly, can invest. Well, I'm in Asia. I'm not in Hong Kong or Singapore, so my taxes are a little higher. But less than $1,000 US, and now I'm broadcasting to anyone who wants to listen to it. Say English speakers. You got the U.S., U.K., India, Philippines. I mean, you're talking about at least 2 billion people, all in. So yeah, that's pretty incredible. And then at the same time, smartphone technology, when that started to come out, I've got an Ace 4 Neo sitting in front of me. It doesn't quite work anymore. An old Samsung deal. I mean, I've got to imagine something like this cost a couple $100, $400 or $500. I didn't pay that for it, but I bought it used, and it worked for about a year and a half. These things cost a lot of money. Now it's getting down to the point where you can get a very, very capable phone. Not that it's gonna, be something to write home about, but in terms of email, video, pictures, etc., $100 US. And so you have an incredible market now as a content creator, and to match that market, the standards that you're held to are very low. A lot of the people who pull major views on YouTube or Instagram, they're not. There's no photo team on the location. They don't have a producer. You don't need one. I mean, the freaking cell phone. I just bought a cell phone for about $200 from Xiaomi, and I'll tell you, that little camera, if you can get past the fact that everything's super wide angle, if you can get past that, although most people like that now, so it's kind of a push and pull. If you can get past that, the pictures that it takes are nuts, and it's like a secondary thing. I'm actually going to start shooting a video with it, so there's some kind of video to go with my my monologues and perhaps interviews. But it's amazing for the money. And I downloaded an app because I guess Xiaomi didn't want to make this thing shoot 4K for whatever reason, kind of push you further up the product ladder. But you download an app and it shoots 4K video. I'm not going to. I don't need 4K. I don't think anyone really needs 4K. I think 1080 is fine, but feel free to flame me in the comments section. I won't read it. Oh, maybe I will. I get bored. Anyway, the underlying concept is the standards. The standards have fallen tremendously at the same time that production capacity has really become something that almost anyone has access to. And if you don't have the money to invest in a condenser mic, you could just shoot it with your cell phone, and you'll get something. You get a product. People probably watch it, and that's amazing to me as somebody who really honed their skills in in photographic media production. I was at that for a good 12, 13 years of my life. I mean, as a central focus of my existence. And now, I don't know. It seems like it's less and less important from a media consumer standpoint. And that's probably where things are headed in the near future and even in the medium term. I see people doing more of this, jumping on the internet, putting something together, having fun with it, because this is just a blast, I'll tell you that. And I'm looking forward to doing a lot more. So that's an hour of my time for free for all of you. I hope you enjoy it. It is given without any expectation of gain, and I'm going to continue to do it because it's just so much fucking fun. I hope I can swear on YouTube without getting demonetized. But you know what? If they don't want to give me any money, I don't fucking care. I hope you all have a wonderful day whenever or wherever or however you might be listening to this. And I will be back. I'm going to figure out how to post this crap tomorrow with my beautiful, beautiful creation. And I'll be back next week. Like I said, there should be at the top and the bottom, there'll be contact info. There'll be a Gmail, nicholassaypodcast at gmail.com. If you want to get on here with me, let's do a Skype. Let's get weird on the internet. That's a great thing. Also, I've got some links on my Patreon to websites I'm published. Next week, I'm going to probably talk a little more about finance as well. I've got a fetish for economics and markets. Definite fetish. I write about it professionally, and I'll talk about it professionally. I also do a lot of work with blockchain and cryptocurrency websites, although I pivot towards blockchain, because I think crypto's got carried away. And I've been on the record on that for about a year now, so I'm not jumping in on the crypto crash, after having lost a ton of money. I didn't go near the sector, and in the future I may, though. I mean, there's real utility in these things, but for another day. So have a good one, and I will be back later on.